What's good? This is Primo from the Red Horizon Creative LLC, coming with the first episode of Fumblin Idiot. This is going to be a podcast about my creative journey here since the start of COVID. And I'll just tell you a little bit about myself really quickly. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up there for most of my life still. I was there till I was 23, moved to Vegas to play poker for my sole income, then went into a tech field doing mechanical work for printers and copiers and fax machines, and then went into IT. And IT led me to San Diego. From San Diego, just been grinding away just like most people with a normal job. And then COVID hit, and I've always been a very creative person, but I've never actually tried to put anything down on paper or digitally, anything along those lines. And I decided to start brainstorming some ideas, and I really started getting a good itch to actually try to create something. So started off the beginning of COVID essentially in 2020 with a video game idea. And mind you, I do not have any coding skills. I do not have any artistry skills. I'm more of just the creative engine on in these projects, which is honestly a really big challenge because financially that's a lot of money to be spending just by putting your ideas in the hands of other people. Um, I tried learning coding for a while, but I'd sleep 3 hours, maybe 4 hours a night. So my learning comprehension the last 15 years or so has been really shitty. But I mean, that's just what it is. So I tried to learn the coding so I could do Unity or even Unreal Engine and create the original game idea was a 6 versus 6, very fast-paced, um, almost like a fantasy chess that you don't have to wait for the other person to go, essentially. Each one of your individual units had its own cooldown, and once the cooldown was ready, you could just your character could perform two actions, and it'd be create this really fast dynamic where you also had I wish I remember the old arcade game's name where there was like reaction buttons you had to push to try to dodge stuff, or each one of your little characters would have that as well, which that had a cooldown. And it was going to be a really fast and fun paced kind of game. And it was called For the Core because the whole story is based on this alien rock that this king went into outer space and brought back, but it killed him and corrupted his son and turned him into basically the villain of the story and the realm, and that's where that went. So the whole game was based around these core shards that these new heroes would collect and piece together in basically unique combinations of three, and it would create different types of magic basically, and there was 12 different um, magics that you could kind of create with the combinations of the shards. And it was going to be a really fast, fun-paced game. I hired someone through a company called Upwork, which is a contracting company on you can just go online and find and hire people from all around the world. And I had a very nice person named Nikita from Russia was doing the coding for my game. We were making good progress, even though that they were working part time for me, about 15 to 20 hours a week. We were actually making good headway on the actual like the menu and customization for the game, which was really exciting just to see it kind of slowly progress, which was awesome. I've never done anything like this and seen it like kind of come to life. And then we started actually getting to the point where we wanted to at least test the in-game mechanics because some of what we were doing was really unique to us, and it wasn't in any game at the time. There is a game out there now that has a similar mechanic, but it's like a pixel art game. But anyway, then the war in Ukraine and Russia started, and we were no longer allowed to fund any artists or any contractors from those areas any longer. It just got completely shut down, which is understandable. Um, I felt bad for Nikita. They lived on like like furthest outside part of Russia, basically in a small town, and everything got shut down from their Apple Pay to like their town had a hard time getting supplies and stuff. It was really stressful for them. So I felt bad that she lost the income from the project, but it also was probably a good thing, in all honesty, that it ended for me at least, because the creative idea I had to create that game and have it be, polished enough to want to put it out there, it was going to take 4 years probably, if I'm being realistic. 3 years with like maybe publishing like a beta version of the game where people could play test for us and everything along with that on a public server. But 4 years for it to be an actual polished good game is realistically what it would take, and I would have to hire more people than just Nikita too. So it was kind of a really big idea for a project. Um, for the first time, I've never designed a game or anything along those lines ever before. So it was good that it ended, but I was kind of still a bit too naive. And the next project I started trying to build out was a digital card game, which that project uh, was is still ongoing. It's just moved from digital to physical. Just the slow pace of creating that game digitally was taking way too long for the amount of money I was spending. I had a coder working 40 hours a week for me, and I had an artist who was working 20 hours to 25 hours a week for me at the same time. And the art side of everything was progressing like as fast as you could expect it. It was going great. Or I should actually start and say the original artist, or a few artists I actually hired, their artwork just wasn't up to par for what I was looking for, in all honesty. Um, so I spent even more money going through trying to find the correct artist for the project. Um, my coder Fahad was phenomenal. He helped me out tremendously, kind of learning more of like the in-depth side, like project management for game design and everything. He was awesome. Um, the way things projected from the coding standpoint was going way too slow for what I was already used to, though. Like the amount of coding that he would write seemed astronomically more in depth compared to what my previous coder had written, and the amount of progress shown was like at least from a visual standpoint was way behind what I was getting done from a part-time coder. So I don't know if it was just a more in-depth kind of program, or I know there's different styles of coding too. So I don't know if he just did more in-depth coding, like wrote more like infrastructure to make sure there was less problems later. I don't know, but I spent way too much money basically for the progress that we had made, because we originally talked about a timeline of at least getting a client where we could at least open the game up. Obviously, not being polished or having art completely done, anything like that. And we were well past the timeline by a couple months. So I just decided to take that game from being a digital game, and then just turn it into a physical game, which still, the game is a very very big project, and that game, honestly, again, me being naive, starting with a project that's probably way too big, um, it's going to take me probably 4 years, if I'm being honest with myself, for that one as well, because the amount of art for the first whole set of release is going to be 500, maybe more pieces of individual art, just that alone, to get designed. And I'm constantly struggling with um, the moral decision between using an artist that I pay, or going through the AI art right now that is so much quicker and convenient. but it's very frowned upon. But also, if I want to finish a project like that scope for the amount of finances I have, I'm going to have to use some form of the AI art, even if it's just background art, and then my artist who I kept from the digital game over to the physical game. His name is Pedro. He's phenomenal. He still works with me every day. He's amazing. But like realistically for that game, that me and Pedro have talked about this as well. That like we're most likely going to do all of the backgrounds using the AI art whenever we continue on with that project. But realizing how long that project was, just I wanted to learn more about like publishing, manufacturing, any type of production because I don't have any experience in this realm either, going to a physical version of a game instead of digital now. Same thing, I have no experience. So I was looking to find out more about everything I'll need to know for this big 4 year project that is the card game, which will be a very big undertaking. So I decided let's shift our attention, and I came up with another game idea that'll take us a year to a year and a half tops to complete from start to finish before we can launch it to a Kickstarter. And that's a board game that we're creating now called Warp Drive, and everything's going so well to the point that like I've already started thinking about the next project, which will be probably about the same timeline, about a year and a half. All in the same time, I still can play test the card game, which is called Pillars of Magic, in the background whenever I get free time and I get people who are available to play test, because that's a game that's going to take a lot of tweaking of the rules and everything like that before I even need to like keep production moving on the art and thinking about hiring additional artists and things of that nature. But I can at least get the company name out there, hopefully in a reliable standing, at least with Warp Drive, the board game, which is a space shooter that has a unique engineering mechanic that I came up with. That so far in the few playtests people seem to have really enjoyed, and that we have a lot of fun at both times that we've played the game. We have our next playtest coming up March 26th, which is exciting. Um, but yeah, so everything with that game's going great. I'm actually printing my first prototype. They're actually coming this week. I should get them by March 16th. March 10th is the actual date they're supposed to come, but March 16th is the latest they're supposed to arrive. So I should have all the prototypes before that first the next playtesting session, which is really exciting. I got 3D little miniatures printed for all the spaceships. I got a whole bunch of cards printed. I got the actual game board and the art printed. It's been really exciting progressing through that project with the help of Pedro. Pedro has been unbelievable, like indispensable. I couldn't trade him for anyone, to be honest with you. He's been amazing. But as we continue with the podcast, it's just going to be me talking about the process. I'm actually just going to dive into individual parts of the process and then talk about things that I've been originally thought of, and then what I learned through, studying people's games that they've already published and everything, or learning through YouTube videos and articles and all that nature, and then talk about the progressions that I've had as I essentially awaken the idiot, which is my what I'm titling the episode here for the creative journey for Red Horizon and all my game designs. I hope you will stick around and leave some comments, subscribe if you can, and I'm just gonna start pumping out at least one of these probably every 2 weeks, maybe a little longer depending on how busy I am with the projects. But I'll be fairly consistent with these, and then hopefully have good good topics of discussion and things that that I've discovered and have been learning and failed in my now 2.5 years of trying to learn game design. Thanks for listening.